Do they need to play an A-plus game if they ran into the Chiefs or the Ravens in the playoffs? Of course, everybody would. But because their defensive line can make a quarterback's life miserable, I think they have a puncher's chance against anybody they play.
Ooh, what up, H-Town? Hey, how we doing?
He's Blank. I'm Branham. It's Brian behind the glass. It is a Taco Tuesday edition of the Killer Bees on ESPN 97.5 and ESPN 92.5. We have a busy show. Cash 'em or trash 'em. We like to do that on Tuesdays. A lot of Texan stuff going on. A lot of stuff that I got to get off my chest when it comes to things that are happening around the sports world. Of course, film don't lie. We'll get to that as well. I feel a lot of people are down on the Houston Texans, and rightfully so. 16-point lead at the half. Context matters. How you lost the game against one of the best teams in the NFL. That absolutely matters. So I understand where everybody's coming from. But there's reasons why I'm not quitting the Houston Texans, and they're mostly on the defensive side of the football. But look what they do against some of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Look at what they've done against some of the teams that they faced so far this year. You go past this past weekend, Jared Goff was leading one of the best offenses in the NFL. He went 15 for 30 with 5 interceptions. That's a good day defensively. Anthony Richardson stinks, but Anthony Richardson, 10 for 32, an interception. You got him benched for a bum and basically ruined that franchise. Jordan Love, 220 yards, meh. 3 touchdowns, pretty good, but 220 yards, meh. It took him 33 passes to get there, and you intercepted him twice. Josh Allen, 9 for 30, 131 yards. He might win the MVP. 9 for 30, 131 yards. Trevor Lawrence, yes, he's a bum, but 18 for 33, 169 yards. You're 7th in the league in sacks. You're 3rd in pressure rate. On top of that, you're 2nd in defensive DVOA. You're 3rd in total defense. And because you have this defensive line, I think that you can play with anybody in the NFL, and you at least have a puncher's chance because of that defensive line specifically.
Well, and I think the other thing, Jeremy, is something that we were concerned with across the board with this team when we started the season, and that's depth. And when you look at the depth of the defense in particular, and you look at the fact that you had guys that at the start of the year and when training camp happened, you're like, well, Mario Edwards, he's over the hill, and he's just going to be a camp body. He's probably not going to make the team. And the first 4 weeks, he was playing out of his mind, and now he's suspended, but he's going to come back. And the fact that they have a rotation now, because we were wondering how they were going to use Autry along with Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. Will Anderson Jr. goes down, Autry fills in, and you've got pass rush still, and you've got the ability to put, a pressure on the quarterback and wreak havoc in the backfield. And then when you talk about the guys they signed on the defensive line, and you look at the guys like Settle and Foley, and guys you're like, I personally thought Reeder and the guys that they had a year ago, Rankins, I thought those guys were better, and I wasn't sure what they were going to do because we heard that D'Amico's out of his mouth was, we're going to improve our run defense and our interior defensive line. I'm like, did they really do that? But then when you see the way that they were able to play, they played better. Azeez El-Shaair, better than what we had a year ago. Then you go out and even at Toto, is a guy we weren't expecting much from. He's better than he was a year ago, even with Christian Harris out. Now you add White, and we're like, well, in a couple weeks, maybe he's just depth, and we'll see if he can contribute at all. And he's contributing. And even at the other corner spot, when we were wondering about if Okudah was going to be the guy that was going to start, and now you look at Lassiter, and you look at the way that they moved Petrie, and the fact that the safeties aren't great, but they're okay, except for Bullock, who's a guy that you really can bank on. There is depth and there is talent across the board on this defense, which should excite you because, especially as it specifically relates to the Lions game, they were wreaking havoc all night long. And yeah, everybody's going to say, well, at the end, they couldn't stop. Not many teams can stop Gibbs. Not many teams can stop this Lions offense. You held them to about half the points they were averaging in the last several games.
For me, it's because you can wreak havoc on a quarterback, because that is a very important thing to do from the defensive side of the ball. Like whenever we look at the offense right now for the Houston Texans, are like, what is ailing them? What is going wrong? And there's a bunch of different things, but it's like your quarterback play for many different variables: play calling, protection, injuries to the wide receiver, a lot of quarterback play by itself. There are a lot of variables that go into the production of the position. But that's the most important position in all of football. That makes an offense go. So if you can have these kind of days in the NFL against some of the better quarterbacks, where Jared Goff, who's been unbelievable, goes 15 for 30 and 5 interceptions, or Josh Allen, who's one of the favorites to win the MVP, goes 9 for 30 for 131 yards, because you can get into the face of the quarterback that you're facing. And you can do it, quite frankly, because your defensive line's really good. You can do it with a four-man rush. You can do it with Danielle Hunter. Like, Will Anderson didn't even play in the game against the Lions. He's going to help you. I promise you that the reigning defensive player of the month, it would help the Houston Texans. So, look, the Texans are nowhere near their potential. They haven't played anywhere near their potential. I'm not even telling you that they're going to get to their potential. Maybe this is just who they are offensively, a middle-of-the-pack offense that's incredibly disappointing considering the expectations we had for them. But I'm telling you right now, their defensive line might be the best in the NFL. It's one of the best in the NFL. And you can see it, the proof's in the pudding, based on how they make these quarterbacks struggle and these really good quarterbacks struggle. So I think that they have a puncher's chance against anybody that they play. Now, do they need to play an A-plus game if they ran into the Chiefs or the Ravens in the playoffs? Of course, everybody would. But because their defensive line can make a quarterback's life miserable, I think they have a puncher's chance against anybody they play.
Well, you think about it. If you're playing quarterbacks that are of that grade and that skill level, all it takes is one game. It's not a 3-game series. If you get in and you're able to do that against a good quarterback and a good team in a playoff situation, you're giving yourself more than a puncher's chance if you can slow them down and have the effectiveness you've had against several of the quarterbacks that you mentioned. So I think that that's encouraging all in itself. The depth, the talent, the ability to have standout guys at almost every level of the defense, and then to have the track record you've already shown playing good offenses and good quarterbacks. On the flip side, people call me crazy, but when you start talking about the fact that Joe Mixon, until he got hurt, and see if you notice the narrative here, but until he got hurt, Joe Mixon was having one of the better seasons as a running back in the NFL. And oh, by the way, going into the game, he was third in terms of yards per game. Then when you look at it, Nico Collins, until he got hurt, was the best receiver in football and was putting up massive numbers. So you've got talent there, running back and at wide receiver, and even with Diggs. And I think that it all starts with the offensive line, because of the fact that I still believe in C.J. Stroud, too. So if they can just somehow find a way to just put a Band-Aid on it and makeshift this offensive line, this offense can still score points. We saw it in the first half Sunday night.
Yeah, you're talking about like reaching their potential, which I'm with you. Like if those things hit, now you reach your potential, and we'll see how it goes. And you have, well, you're 6-4 right now, so you have 7 games left to figure it out, and then hopefully you're lucky enough to get into the to the postseason. You're lucky enough to get into the tournament, lucky enough to get into the dance and try to make a run. But if there's one thing that I would hang my hat on right now, like let's say the playoffs started tomorrow, what is the one area that you feel gives you your best chance to win a football game? And for me, it's by far the defensive line. And you're not getting the quarterback play that you want, that you think that you need to win in the NFL or win critical games in the postseason or win consecutive games in the postseason. But your defensive line is limiting what the opposing quarterback is doing, to where if they have a bad day, and the Texans have shown that they're more than capable of having a quarterback have a bad day, a good quarterback, Goff and Allen, then they can go out and win that specific game. So if the Texans were playing a playoff game tomorrow and you were to say, well, you have to risk your life on one specific area of this football team, what would it be? For me, it's easily the defensive line. I'm curious what other people think. 713-780-ESPN, HRP listener line, 713-780-3776. I do think that the corner play helps that, because if you can defend and you can cover, then it allows the defensive line more time, all of those things. You spoke to the depth of the team. That's one area where I don't love the depth. Like, Kamari Lassiter went off, and they had to go to Kadir Holloman, and it's like, that's a massive drop-off. Hopefully Akuta's back, and we can see Akuta actually play a little bit of defense this year. I still think that's a significant drop-off. But one area of this football team that you think is the best, I don't know how the answer is not defensive line.
Well, and also, remember when we talked about it even from the start of the season, but ironically, it was starting with the coaching staff that was talking about, hey, the defense is ahead of the offense. Hey, in training camp, the defense has been outplaying the offense. Well, we were like, yeah, okay, but that's going to change. Well, it hasn't. We've said throughout the season that the calling card for this team has been the defense. And the offense at times has been good, but that's why I highlighted the guys on offense, because we talked yesterday. We've never seen the perfect storm hit where the running game and the passing game are clicking basically at the same time, and they're clicking on all cylinders. But on the times where you just have one, the running game or the passing game, that can be enough when your defense plays to the level that they're capable of playing.
Yeah, they have to step up offensively, though. Like, I don't think there's anybody who would say, like, if we ask the question, what is the strong suit of this team? What is the one area that you think could be one of the best in the entire NFL? 713-780-ESPN. Defensive line, they're right there. Defensive line, they're right there with anybody in the NFL. I think that I would stack up the Texans' defensive line with just about anybody in the NFL. Linebackers, nah, probably not. Maybe if you had Harris and Aziz, that's different, but you don't. You haven't had Christian Harris all year, so I can't do the ifs and buts. You haven't had them all season. The corners, I like the cornerback duo, but do I like it more than the defensive line? No. Safeties, you're not saying that. Stroud has played nowhere near what we thought he was going to play. Running back has been fine, but it's kind of a one-headed monster, and it's kind of been iffy, and he's been hurt. Receivers you thought would be, but Nico's been hurt. Diggs has been out for the year. Tank, a lot of people thought, underproduced in the first few games when both of those guys were healthy. Schultz hasn't been that good, and the offensive line's probably been the weakest point of the Houston Texans. I don't think there's another answer. I think it's an obvious, clear-cut, the strongest position group on this football team is defensive line, and it probably should be. You drafted Will Anderson, number 3, after you traded up for him, won Defensive Rookie of the Year. You signed Daniil Hunter to a big 2-year contract. You did change some pieces in the interior defensive line, like you said, that you had some questions, you had some wonders, but Foley's been good. Settle's been good. Mario Edwards has been good. This Tungan guy that they picked up from the practice squad looked pretty good to me whenever I was watching the film earlier today. So I don't think that there's any other answer. Is there any other position groups that even contend?
Does quarterback count?
I don't think quarterback's even close. C.J. Stroud's playing nowhere near like a top 10 quarterback.
No, I mean,
you're going on potential.
Well, but yeah, and talent. I mean, I still think that the talent is there. There's no doubt that because of all the factors we've talked about, that the production is way down and the performance is down. But it doesn't stop me from believing that this guy is still one of the top 10 quarterbacks in this league, and that on a good day or when he's got protection, that he can be higher than that.
Yeah, for sure. But that's going on expectation, that's going on potential, and that's going on what you think of him going forward. And I agree. I think C.J. Stroud has top 5 quarterback potential. Is he playing like a top 5 quarterback right now? No. And there's a lot of variables, again, that go into quarterback production. If you put C.J. Stroud on a high school football team, the Milby Buffaloes, he's going to have struggles. He's going to have a very difficult time. You put an average quarterback on the best offense in the NFL, then they're going to shine. That might be Jared Goff. Jared Goff's playing like a top 5 quarterback unless he's going up against the Houston Texans. Do we think Jared Goff is one of the top 5 quarterbacks from a talent perspective in the NFL? I don't.
Brian does. He thinks he's going to win the MVP.
That's different because that's talking about the production of the player. That's talking about the production because of the offense that he's built around. And sorry for the stray, Milby Buffaloes. But yeah, the defensive line to me is easily clear-cut the best position group that they've put on tape this year. Because I agree with you with Stroud. Stroud could be a top 5 quarterback, but they haven't put that on tape. 6'9", 2'7". I said at the beginning of the season that D'Amico set up the defensive line similar to how the Giants set up their D-line for all those Super Bowl runs. I don't think that's a bad call. And that's the name of the game in the NFL. If you get really good quarterback play, you have a really good chance to win. See Pat Mahomes. If you have a defense that can ruin the day for quarterbacks, you're going to have really good defensive performances. And that's right now the best chance for the Houston Texans to win.
Bears, Broncos, Ravens, those are the type teams when they got to a Super Bowl, those weren't led by offensive, juggernauts. Those were led by teams that had a defense that was able to absolutely win a game almost single-handedly by themselves without a ton of offensive production. When you think about it, the comparison to the Giants is good because you had Tuck on the inside, you had Strahan on the outside, you had solid run stoppers in the middle, you had guys across the board. San Francisco used to have that kind of line, and then with cap casualties, they had to kind of get creative and move some guys. But when you look at it, Autry's a guy you can move around. When you've got Anderson and you've got Hunter on the outside, they can control the edge and they can get after the quarterback. The inside guys are just absolutely just blobs, stalking up the run and getting back in the backfield. They're capable of being as staunch as any D-line in this game, and they are capable of winning games.
Yeah. Is there another position group on this team that can rival the Texans' defensive line? 713-780-ESPN. 6043 said Stroud had protection this week, crap the bed. I think the protection was better, but I'm not going to sit here and say that Stroud's protection was fantastic. That said, Stroud did crap the bed in the second half. I think he choked in the second half.